their parent thought twice about it. David stood beside me, phone in his pocket, clapping for our son. And then his phone buzzed, and I watched him glance down out of habit, the way people do 100 times a day without thinking. I watched his face change for exactly 1 second before he caught himself. I already knew what the message said, because I'd been watching Priya's body language all morning, the extra care in her outfit, the way she kept angling herself near David during photos. The small proprietary hand she rested on his arm, helping him hold Miles's art folder, a touch that lasted 1 beat too long for a nanny and her employer. I smiled through the entire showcase. I clapped for the Caterpillar song. I hugged Miles when he ran to me afterward with paint on his hands, and I meant that hug with everything in me. Because whatever happened next, it could not touch what I had with my boys. That night I called Diane. "I'm ready," I told her. "Tell me exactly what happens next." She walked me through it, calm and methodical, the way a surgeon might describe an operation she'd performed 100 times. The recording was admissible. Colorado's one-party consent law meant I didn't need David's permission to have recorded a conversation I was present for, even accidentally. The nanny contract's morality clause gave me clean legal ground to terminate Priya's employment immediately, without severance, and without needing to explain myself to anyone. And the financial discrepancies I'd logged, the wine bar charges, the unexplained hours, would matter enormously once we got to the division of assets, because Colorado courts absolutely do consider dissipation of marital funds on an affair. "There's one more thing," Diane said. "Do you want this quiet? Or do you want this to matter to him? Because there's a difference between winning and having him understand exactly what he lost." I thought about the 58 minutes. About she trusts me too much to even look. About 12 years of building a life with someone who had learned to lie to me with a straight face over roast chicken and Tuesday night television. "I want him to understand," I said. Diane was quiet for a moment. Then she said the words that set the entire next phase in motion. "Then we're not going to tell him what you know. We're going to let him tell everyone else first." Diane's plan was simple in concept, brutal in execution. David wasn't going to hear the truth from me in a private conversation he could spin, soften, or talk his way around. He was going to watch it become undeniable in front of the people whose opinions he actually cared about. The opportunity came 2 weeks later, his sister Kate's 40th birthday dinner, 30 people at a private room in a downtown steakhouse, the kind of event David had spent months talking about, because his family's approval mattered to him more than almost anything. Priya, notably, wasn't invited. That detail mattered. It meant David still believed his 2 lives were sealed off from each other, safe in separate rooms. What he didn't know was that in the 3 weeks since the preschool showcase, I'd been quietly building something with Diane's guidance, not a confrontation, but a paper trail so complete it could stand entirely on its own. Bank records showing the wine bar charges. A private investigator Diane recommended, who'd confirmed and photographed 2 more visits to Priya's apartment complex, time-stamped, dated, indisputable, and the 58-minute recording, which our attorney had confirmed was fully admissible. I also did something that surprised even me. I met with Priya alone, at a coffee shop, 3 days before the dinner. She looked terrified when she sat down. I think some part of her already suspected I knew. "I'm not here to yell at you," I told her, and I meant it. "I'm here to tell you that your employment is terminated, effective today, for cause, under the morality clause in your contract. You'll receive no severance. I've documented everything. And I want you to know, this isn't really about you. You're 26. He's a married man who told you I trusted him too much to look. Ask yourself what that tells you about what he'll say about you. to someone else, in 3 years. She didn't say anything. She just started crying. And I left. Because I hadn't come there for her tears. I'd come there to close a door. The dinner itself unfolded exactly the way normal family dinners do: wine poured, speeches given, Kate blowing out 40 candles to applause. David sat beside me, relaxed, laughing at his father's terrible jokes, his hand resting on my knee under the table like it belonged there. I let him have that. I let him have every ordinary minute of it, because I understood something Diane had taught me. The sweetness of an ending depends entirely on how safe the person felt right before it arrived. Dessert came. Coffee was poured. And then, during the natural lull when people go around sharing something they're grateful for, I stood up, glass in hand, and asked if I could say something. David smiled up at me, expecting a toast. "I'm grateful," I said, "for 12 years of marriage that taught me exactly what I deserve, and exactly what I won't tolerate. I'm grateful I recorded a voice memo by accident 8 weeks ago, because it let me hear my husband tell our nanny that I trusted him too much to ever look. I did look, David. I looked at everything." The room went silent, in that specific way rooms go silent, when something true and unstoppable has just been said out loud. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I set an envelope on the table in front of him: copies, not originals. Diane had been clear about that, containing the transcript, the financial records, and the private investigator's photos. I've already filed. Diane Okafor is my attorney. You'll hear from her by Monday. David's face went through 4 different colors in the space of 10 seconds. His mother's hand flew to her mouth. Kate, whose birthday it was, just stared at her brother with an expression I will remember for the rest of my life. Not shock exactly, more like recognition, like something she'd half suspected finally confirmed. "Claire, please," David started, standing, reaching for my arm. "Not here. Let's talk about this at home." "There's no home to talk in anymore," I said. "I already had the locks changed this afternoon. Your things are in the garage. You can arrange to collect them through Diane's office." I picked up my coat, kissed Kate on the cheek, told her I was sorry to disrupt her birthday, and walked out into the cold Denver night alone, for the first time in 12 years, feeling more like myself than I had in months. The weeks after that dinner didn't feel like victory right away. They felt like silence, the specific, heavy silence of a house, with one less person breathing in it. David tried calling for the first 3 days. Then texting. Then he sent a long message about context and pressure at work and how Priya had pursued him, which I read once, standing in my kitchen, and deleted without responding. Diane had told me this would happen. "Guilty people don't apologize first," she'd said. "They explain first. Watch for the moment the explaining turns into an actual apology." That's the only one worth reading. It never came. What did come, over the following 2 months, was the slow unraveling Diane had promised would happen once people stopped feeling safe. Kate, David's sister, called me the week after her birthday dinner, not to check on David, but to apologize on his behalf and to tell me she'd already told their parents everything. David's father, a retired contractor who'd walked David down the aisle at our wedding with actual tears in his eyes, reportedly didn't speak to him for 3 weeks. Professionally, it cost him more than he expected. His firm had a strict conduct policy around workplace-adjacent relationships, and though Priya wasn't technically a coworker, the story had legs in their tight-knit industry circle by the time 2 separate colleagues mentioned it to his managing partner. He wasn't fired outright. He was quietly moved off the partnership track he'd spent 6 years building, the one he used to talk about at dinner like it was the whole point of his life. Priya, for her part, reached out to me once more. Weeks later, not for forgiveness but to tell me she'd left the state, taken a job in Phoenix, near her sister. I didn't respond to that one either. Some doors, once you close them, don't need a goodbye. The divorce settlement, when it finalized 4 months later, wasn't dramatic. Diane had built the case too cleanly for it to be. The dissipation of assets documentation meant David's share was adjusted to account for the money spent during the affair. I kept the house. I kept primary custody, with David maintaining regular visitation, because whatever he'd done to me, he was still Noah and Miles's father, and I refused to let my anger cost my sons their dad. I moved the baby monitor. No, wait, that's not this story. What I moved was my phone's voice memo app off my home screen.